Welcome back to Battleground. The State Department estimates that nearly 9 million Americans live outside of the U.S., including about 1.4 million who serve in the military. And when you zoom in to some of our swing states, you see why this matters. In 2020, nearly 20,000 Georgia voters living abroad cast ballots, a state that was famously decided by fewer than 12,000 votes. Also in 2020, Wisconsin saw more than 13,000 overseas votes counted, with nearly twice that many in North Carolina, both significant totals in a tight election. For more on the surprisingly large number of American voters living abroad, I'm joined by Erich McElroy, host of the American Exchange podcast. Erich, it's so good to have you here.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me, SE.
Okay, you are an American living abroad. When we talked about this story like a month ago, I was fascinated just by how many Americans living abroad are able to vote. So start at the most important part. How do voters living overseas get registered to vote?
Well, there's a couple different websites they can do it on. There's votefromabroad.org, and there's also the federal website, which is the Federal Voting Assistance Program, it's hard to say. There's too many sounding letters that sound the same. The FVAP.gov.
Okay.
And those are the two places you can go, and they guide you towards making sure you register in the right state. Because, of course, the state system with the Electoral College, no matter how long you've been outside of the U.S., you connect to the state that you're from. Or if you're like my daughter, who was born abroad, but to two U.S. citizens, she's a U.S. citizen, she's going to register in my home state, because that's what you do. They help you decide, like, should I register with the state that my mom is from or my dad is from? You can choose if you're both from the U.S. Or just the state that you last lived in.
Do you get the sense that voters living abroad, where you are, realize how important their vote is this year, how tight the race is going to be?
Well, the biggest thing is them realizing that they can vote, because there's only about 14% of Americans abroad estimated, because we don't even know exactly how many Americans are abroad because we're not part of the official census.
Yeah.
So anybody who's giving numbers, it's an estimate like you've had. So a lot of people don't realize, because they've been gone a long time. Some countries in the world say if you're gone for a long time, you lose your right to vote. But America's not that way. As a U.S. citizen, I still file a U.S. tax return every year. When my son turns 18, even though he never has lived in the United States, he's still legally required to register for selective service. So when you have that engagement still happening with a country that you've been away from maybe for a long time, you should have a right to vote. And American citizens who are over 18 all do.
So both parties spend time and money reaching out to voters overseas. How does that work? Have you seen people on the ground, in the street, trying to get Americans to vote back home?
Well, it's a little more scattered around than that, because there's, hundreds of thousands, like I'm in the UK, of Americans that live here. So a lot of it is online initiatives. There's a lot of stuff happening on social media to make people realize that they can register and to help them engage with that. So Democrats Abroad, which is an organization started in 1964, is an official part of the Democratic Party. They do a lot of engagement, and they estimate they've already registered 100,000 people to vote in the election this year.
Wow.
But we also have to sometimes re-register because of the way the rules are. Your ballot, so you might have registered in 2020. There might be Americans out there who are thinking, oh, my ballot's just going to get sent to me. You can't count on that, and you need to double check to make sure that your voice is heard. You have a right to vote, and you should do so. So they do, online things. We did a Zoom to raise awareness about it. Of course, everyone's doing Zoom calls these days. They do, old-fashioned leafleting, text messages, all that kind of stuff.
Really interesting. Why do you think such a low percentage of voters abroad vote historically? Is it because of what you were talking about? They just don't know that they can?
I think it's a combination of maybe not realizing that they can, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's also just that sense of, well, I've been gone a long time. Do I have a right to? A lot of the Americans abroad might be just studying abroad for a semester and think, oh, my ballot, I missed it, and it got sent. Well, they might be from a state that doesn't do automatic mail ballots, that kind of thing. You've got the military families, of course. You've got people that are on short-term work assignments, and also now we have global nomads who work from and live from anywhere. Right. And they might just miss that opportunity to get their ballot.
And just this week, Erich, Donald Trump posted a long thread on his Truth Social platform accusing Democrats of cheating when it comes to overseas ballots. Is there any validity to that argument that you know of?
I would probably say no. It's really upsetting because, well, I guess it's a couple of things. One, it means they realize that, we're getting together. And the key thing from, even though it's Democrats abroad that drive a lot of this, we want people to vote. And if you're an independent, you can vote. This is not just a Democratic initiative. If you're a Republican, to vote. If you're unaffiliated, all of those things, the key thing is to vote. And misinformation like that says you can't vote from abroad is just simply not true. And he's probably going to hurt himself in that. The people are going to think, oh, I shouldn't vote because of Donald Trump's truth, when they can, and they have a right to.
I wonder how many Americans living abroad are there to escape American politics and therefore maybe don't want to mess around with this election.
Well, I mean, that's all the more reason to use your right to vote. As a U.S. citizen, we're one of the few countries in the world that tax its citizens no matter where they live.
Yeah.
A lot of countries say, well, if you're domiciled in another country, you don't have to file a domestic tax return. And the U.S. isn't like that. Yeah. And again, like I said, my son, when he could be drafted by a future administration, so he should have a right to vote in what that administration might be. So I think there's always a connection there. A lot of people have said to me, like, why do you even care anymore? You've been gone for so long. It's because I have family there. My daughter has a right to move back, and I want her to move to a state she would feel safe in. Though all of those things still matter to us. And, America is something that sticks with you even if you leave it. I always will be American, no matter where I live.
Oh, you're going to make me cry. Erich McElroy, host of the American Exchange podcast. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks for watching. And make sure to go to votefromabroad.org to get your ballot or to check on the registration of your ballot. Don't miss out. And while you're here, why not subscribe to my podcast or subscribe to this channel, like this video, share it with some other people, and see some interesting discussions with fascinating people about U.S. politics. Votefromabroad.org.